Alright guys, we are back talking about some more ways to learn perimeter and measure perimeter. Remember in the last lesson we talked about using those unit squares and counting the lengths on the edges, and then we also started talking a little bit about if we have a shape and we know the length of each side, we can just add up all the sides. Today we're going to kind of use that second thinking to grow our knowledge a little bit more about perimeter. So this question right here wants to know what the perimeter is of this rectangle below. Now it's important that we know it's a rectangle because we just learned in the last chapter the attributes of a rectangle. Remember, attributes just means things that shape has. And we know that rectangles have two pairs of opposite sides that are equal in length. So you can see this rectangle only has markings for the lengths on each of two sides. But since we know that rectangles have opposite sides, that's this side and this side, of equal length, I know that since this side is 5 inches, this side is also 5 inches. I am sure of that because the problem told me this is a rectangle, and I know that rectangles have opposite sides of equal length. So following that same thinking, if this side is 3 inches, then that means this side is 3 inches. Okay? Now, we've got all of our sides. We know perimeter, add up all the sides. So we know our next step is, in order to find the full perimeter, is just to add up the numbers that we've got here. Now, I notice a couple of things. I notice that I have 2 5s, and I notice that I have 2 3s. So maybe instead of adding 5, 5, 3, and 3, I can think of some multiplication. I have 5 2 times out there, 1 and 2. So I can think of that as 5 times 2, and then I've measured those sides. And then I see that I also have 3 2 times out there. 1, 2. And I can think of that as 6. So the whole perimeter must be 16. Now, it's okay to use addition to solve this as well. Multiplication might be a little faster. You probably wouldn't need to write it out like this. You guys know your 2's by now, and your 3's and your 5's. So this would be something simple you could do in your head and keep track of. But if you feel more comfortable adding up all the sides, you're going to get the same exact answer, and it's okay to use addition to solve this also, okay? We know 5 and 5 make 10, 10 and 3 more make 13, 13 and 3 more make 16. So guess what? Either way we did it, whether we used multiplication or addition, we're getting the same answer as our perimeter here. Alright, here Mr. Coe needs to find the perimeter of 2 swimming pools. One pool is a rectangle, that's this one. The other pool is a square. What is the perimeter of each square? So I'll grab blue and we'll work with blue on this rectangle. So following that thinking that we just used on the page before this, we know that rectangles have 2 opposite sides that are the same length. So if this guy's 10 over here, that makes this guy 10, and it's 10 meters. They give us that unit. If this guy's 6, and I know it's a rectangle, that means this guy is 6. Now you can use either thinking. You can multiply, or you can just add up all the sides to figure out what the perimeter is. I know that 10 times 2 is 20, and 6 times 2 is 12, and 20 plus 12 is 32. And I know we're measuring in meters. So the perimeter of this guy is 32 meters. Switch to red over here for the square. Now, some attributes of a square. We know that it has 4 sides of equal length. So if I know one side, and I know for sure it's a square because it told us in the problem, then I know the length of all the other sides. If this guy is 9 down here, that means this guy is, this guy, and this guy. So we can think of it as 9 plus 9 plus 9 plus 9, or 9 times 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so either way you think of that, whether you want to add up 9 4 times, or you're like, Miss Arnold, I already know how to multiply, I know my 9s, I know my 4s, then you're going to find out either way that the perimeter of this guy is 36 meters. Okay? So this one actually has a little bit larger of a perimeter around it. Okay? And this is them doing that same thing here. They're showing you, hey, you can do that 10 times 2 and 6 times 2, or you can just add them all up. And then down here, they're doing that same thing on that square we just did, adding up 4 9s or multiplying 4 times 9. Down here, Darla drew this parallelogram, write equations to show how to find the perimeter. Okay? So remember, an equation is just any kind of math problem that you would use to solve it. So really, they're just asking you to show your work here. That's basically what they're doing. Okay? Now, this is a parallelogram that tells us that in the question. So we know that a parallelogram has opposite sides that are equal in length. So if this guy's 9, I know this guy also is 9. If this guy's 5, I know this guy is also 5. Okay? So that's why we have to know those shape attributes that we talked about a lot in the last chapter, because when we're trying to find perimeter, it's important that we know, hey, are these opposite sides equal or are they not? Is there a way to find out the missing side? Because sometimes there might not be. Down here, there's 2 equations you could write. You could think of it as 9 times 2 plus 5 times 2. And I'm getting those numbers from, hey, I have 2 9s, and then I have 2 5s. So I can add my 2 9s to my 2 5s. Okay? I know that 9 times 2 is 18, 5 times 2 is 10, and together they would make 28. Another equation you could write, you could just do the addition. 9 plus 5 plus 9 plus 5. Of course, you could put these in any order that you want to. 9 and 5 is 14. 14 and 9 more is 23. 23 and 5 more is 28. So guess what? Same thing. We get that same answer whether we used multiplication equations or we used addition. Because we know really that multiplication is just repeated addition. Here we've got something new. This one is not a quadrilateral, meaning it doesn't have 4 sides. We're looking here at a triangle. And they tell us an equilateral triangle has 3 sides of the same length. Okay? Which I always kind of remember that word because I see that word equal in equilateral triangle, and that reminds me, oh, okay, the sides must be equal. So if we were going to find the perimeter of this guy, we could either add up all the sides, 4 plus 4 plus 4, or we could say, hey, I see 3 4s, so 3 times 4 is 12. And they got that same answer either way. Okay. Number 1, how can you use multiplication and addition to find the perimeter of a rectangle with a length of 6 feet and a width of 4 feet? So let's look at that, and I'm just going to draw it. I always like to draw my shapes because it just helps my brain understand instead of trying to picture it in my head and do math on top of it. So they tell us it's a rectangle, so that's why I drew a rectangle. I know it's a length of 6 feet and a width of 4 feet. Okay. Well, remember, rectangles have those opposite sides that are equal, so that makes this side a 6 and this side a 4. How could we use, let's first look at multiplication. Well, I know I've got 6 2 times. I see that here and here. And then I also have 4 2 times. I see that here and here. 6 times 2 is 12. 12 plus 8 is 20. And we are measuring in feet, 20 feet. Okay. Now, if we wanted to use addition, same thinking, we're just going to add 6 and 4 and 6 and 4. 6 and 4 makes 10. That means the other 6 and 4 makes 10. 10 and 10 is 20. So either way, we got that same answer of 20 feet. Do you need to know how to do this with multiplication and addition? Guys, really no. You can pick the way that's comfortable for you. The reason I think it's important to see it as multiplication too is because when you start getting into higher math, like in 4th and 5th grade, you might see answer choices written like this, and so I want you to understand that, hey, this really means the same thing as repeated addition, okay? And it's kind of just looking at it like distributive property of multiplication, so I just want you to be able to look at this way and recognize it means the same thing as this, okay? 2 6s and 2 4s. Okay. Explain how you can find the perimeter of a square with a side of 7. Well, we know that squares, and I drew my shape again, we know that squares have 4 sides of equal length. So if one side's 7, they're all 7. Okay? There's 2 different ways we could solve this. We could use multiplication. I've got 7 4 times. I've got 28, and we're measuring in centimeters. Or you guys know that, hey, you know what? Multiplication is the same thing as repeated addition anyway. 7 and 7 is 14. Another 7 and 7 is 14. 14 and 14 is 28. So I think I'm starting to prove to you that it doesn't matter if you use multiplication or addition. As long as you're doing your math correctly and you're careful about counting every single side, you're going to get the right answer for this. Okay? Just because I got a lot of red going on, I'm going to switch pen colors here. Let's pick something pretty like blue. Alright, finding the perimeter of these. It's important. They tell us on number 3 this guy's a rectangle. So we know by now that means those opposite sides are equal. I always like to write them down just so I can see it. Remember, I can think of it as 8 times 2 plus 4 times 2. Or I can think of it as 8 plus 4 plus 8 plus 4. Whichever way I do that, I'm going to get the same answer. So 8 and 4 would make 12. 8 and 4 would make 12. I'd get 24 feet. Or 8 times 2 is 16, and 4 times 2 is 8. Together they make 24. Okay. And then our last one that we're going to practice with today, it's important. We know it's a square. We know that squares have 4 sides of equal length. So we're really looking at 4 times 5 here, which is 20, or we're looking at 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5, which I know 5 and 5 make 10, another 5 and 5 make 10, 10 and 10 make 20. Oops, and we're not measuring in feet here, we're measuring in centimeters. Okay. So another great thing you can practice at home, draw some shapes. I'll scroll down here. You can use these to practice if you want to pause the computer, practice finding the perimeter, and then maybe if you really want to challenge yourself, find the perimeter and find the area of each. Remember, perimeter is adding up all the sides to find the distance around. Area is finding out how much would fit in the middle. So you would multiply the 2 sides together to find out how much would fit in the middle. So challenge yourself there. Go back and find the area of some of these also.